I love watches, and I really love watches that are somewhat uncommon. Watch brands that not a lot of people get their hands on. For one reason or another, I've always been that way. I've always loved watches that are somewhat uncommon, that you don't see on everyone's wrist. That's kind of the reason why I'm not such a big fan of Rolex. I don't want to see the watch that I have on my wrist on somebody else's wrist. That's just the way I am. Today, I have a list of 10 watch brands that you more than likely will not see on somebody else's wrist because they are very uncommon. They make very low numbers of watches every year, and if you see one on somebody else's wrist, they definitely know about watches. So these are micro brands and independent brands. I think that makes sense because obviously the major brands are very well known. These are a little less known, and they make very low numbers of watches. So let's talk about my top 10 obscure watch brands. So I have to start this list with one of my favorite independent brands that is still somewhat affordable. It is Reuter Watches. Now, I smile when I say the name of this brand because I am really good friends with Dan Reuter. Dan Reuter is the person who actually makes all of the watches that are sold by Reuter Watches. They're all made, handmade in New York City, in Brooklyn, in his studio. Now, I am very proud to say that I am one of the first people, or the first person, to feature Reuter Watches on their YouTube channel. And really, I'm one of the first people in the watch industry to feature Reuter Watches in general. I'm very proud of that, and I bring that up whenever I am talking to somebody about Reuter Watches. Now, he is somewhat blown up. There are a lot of people who are aware of Reuter Watches now. However, Dan takes a stock Valjoux 7750 and transforms it into a hand-finished masterpiece with hand-applied perlage, beveling, graining, and black polish. So essentially what he does is he takes a pedestrian ETA movement and makes it into a hot horology movement. And that is all done over the span of about 90 hours. All of that is done in New York City in his Brooklyn workshop, and it's all done by one man. Now, his watches are still affordable. However, when I did this first video, the first video that was ever done on any of his watches, they were far more affordable. So if you want one of his watches, I highly recommend going out and getting one of his watches before the prices go up again, because they have gone up significantly from 2 years ago when I first featured them on my YouTube channel here on WatchChris. The next brand I want to talk about here on my channel is a watch brand called SpaceOne. I really love oddly shaped watches. I also love watches that tell time in an odd way. But I feel as a collector, as you have a lot of traditional watches, sometimes you want something that's a little bit different, a little bit crazy, maybe not even that crazy, something that's just a little bit different, like a De Bethune or an MB&F or an Urwerk. These are all watches that are very odd looking, tell time in a different way than you would find on a traditional watch. SpaceOne are an affordable version of those brands that I just mentioned. They use affordable movements like Sellita or Soprod, and they give you a case and a display that is different from what you would normally get from a regular watch. For instance, they came out with their first watch that looks like a spaceship. It has a case that looks like a spaceship, and there's a little window. That little window to the spaceship actually houses a jump hour mechanism, and that's the way that you tell the time. They recently came out with the new watch that also gets a very odd case, and this one has a little tiny Earth, a moon, and a sun on the dial. It's got a weird way of displaying the time as well. It's made in grade 5 titanium, and it gets, I believe, a Soprod movement. I actually ordered one of these watches because they're affordable and they look fantastic. It kind of looks like a Urwerk and maybe a traditional watch had a baby. And I really do like the way this watch looks. I think it's something special, especially for the price that they're charging. So I went ahead and bought one. So I will be featuring this watch hands-on here on my channel. Next is a watch brand that I have been lusting after for a very long time, Lyn Veralin. If you're not familiar with this brand, they make integrated bracelet watches that are somewhat high-end. On the secondary market, they don't go for a lot of money. However, if you're buying them new, they are pretty expensive. Originally, they were designed to be an AP Royal Oak alternative, but with one major twist. The watch was designed to hold a large wrist computer on the face of the watch. So that dictated the way that the watch actually looked. It didn't really dictate the way that the watch functioned, but the way that the watch had to look had to be done in a certain way because there was a large computer that needed to fit on top of the watch. These were basically squares that would fasten to the face of the watch, to the case of the watch, and it would need to be secure. So that meant it sort of dictated the way that the watch would look. And what they did with these watches is made them look very futuristic. A lot of people don't like the way that these watches look. I really do, especially on their bracelets. I think their bracelet is really a very special bracelet, very different from anything that you see, more in line with something you might see come out of maybe Moser or something like that, not an independent brand or a small independent brand. This is a very good looking watch, especially on the bracelet. Now, obviously, technology moved on. These computers became obsolete. You have a phone in your pocket or a smartwatch that would replace anything that they could put on top of their watch. It really didn't make a lot of sense. So obviously that went to the wayside. They actually stopped making those computers completely. However, they kept the design. They make a few different designs now that all follow that original design. And I really do like these watches. I think on the secondary market, they're a better buy than obviously at retail. The next brand on this list is another brand that I absolutely love. They are a very small brand, and actually, as of right now, I think they've only made 175 watches, I want to say, or 150 watches. I own one of them. It is Toano Chan. I won't spend too much time on this watch because I've made a full video about their watches here on my channel. I'll put a link to that video up above. However, integrated bracelet watch, inspired by brutalist design. It's made in 904L stainless steel. It gets a Swiss ETA movement inside. It's made in Hong Kong, I believe. And this is just a very, very angular watch that is an integrated bracelet inspired by that brutalist design, but also the Rolex Midas, which makes a lot of sense because that was an integrated bracelet angular watch from the 1970s. And this is heavily inspired by that watch. So when you look at this watch, it has a lot of style. It's not something that you're going to see on anybody else's wrist, not only because no one actually has one. There's only a few people out there who actually own one, but because it's just not a common style. So you'll never see another watch that looks sort of like this watch. This watch is very distinctive. If you see it on someone's wrist, which is very rare, again, you will know exactly what you're looking at. The next watch brand on this list is another watch that I own. They've only made about 200 watches in total thus far. They've been around for only 2 or 3 years. They are called Cume, and if you want to feel like a kid again, or you just really love lume, this is the watch for you. You're getting a die cast case, which is kind of cool. It's all matte finished, and there's a little bit of weird design to the case as well. You're getting a very high boxed sapphire crystal. It's boxed, and when I say boxed, it has a right angle on the crystal. It's pretty incredible, but that's not really the cool part of this watch. Although those are very interesting aspects of the watch, the coolest part about this watch is the dial. The dial is insane on this watch, and it's inspired by one of those pin toys that you had when you were a kid. You know, the ones that you would lay on your middle finger and then leave it someplace so that your middle finger impression would be in those pin toys. I'll throw a picture of what I'm talking about, but I know all people out there, some people put their face on it. I always put my middle finger, but that's just me. The dial is inspired by that toy. So what you're getting is 468 cylindrical markers on the dial. Each one of those get a little bit of superluminova on the top. So you're getting lume on the top of each one of those cylinders. Those cylinders are in 6 different heights and 6 different widths, and they are all hand applied to the dial. Underneath that dial, you're getting a La Joux Perret G100. So this is actually a very cool watch with a very nice movement inside. You know, somewhat of a workhorse movement from Le Joux based on a Miyota movement made in Switzerland. So I really like the G100. There's some other brands on this list that use that movement that are a little bit more affordable, but this is a very rare watch. Like I said, only 200 right now in existence. They keep on selling out. So they came out with the first batch that was a friends and family. I got in on that because I met the owner of the brand randomly at Watch Time, and then he gave me his name and I bought the watch. However, they came out with the second run of these watches and they immediately sold out. They will be coming out with the third run. So if you're interested in this watch, definitely stay tuned and subscribe to their website. I'll put links to all of these brands down in the description, of course, so you guys can definitely check them out. The next brand that I'm talking about is a brand that you're going to actually have to be a little bit fast to be able to buy one. I'm talking about Zeos. Zeos offer really good value for your dollar. You're not spending a lot of money with Zeos, but you're getting a lot of watch. And that's where I was talking about the G100 before, Le Joux. They actually use a lot of Le Joux movements in their watches. They have a pretty good relationship with Le Joux. They use them in their higher end watches because Zeos do make higher end watches. And they also use them in their more affordable watches. So you can actually get a watch that's very affordable from Zeos that features a pretty cool movement like a Le Joux at a very, very good price. Now, what Zeos are really known for is their dials and the materials that they're using. So they experiment with lots of different dials, lots of different dial materials, dial textures. They also experiment with lots of different movements and cases and straps. So they're constantly thinking about their watches and coming up with new materials to use and make them a little bit more interesting than their previous versions. They're using a lot of dial textures and dial materials that you probably would find on a lot more expensive watches. However, you're getting them for pretty good prices with Zeos if you can buy one. That's probably the only downfall with Zeos. They sell out pretty quickly, sometimes in minutes. Next on this list is one of my favorite Microbrands. It's Jack Mason. They're located in Texas. They make some pretty incredible higher end watches. Test this. They're located in Texas, so they are a Texas-based brand, and they basically exploded on the Microbrand scene just a few years ago. Although they've been around for a while, it was the Strat-o-timer that sort of exploded them into the enthusiast space. Their Strat-o-timer, one of the first watches to use a Miyota 9075. It's a true traveler's GMT, very, very high quality. Peter, the owner of Jack Mason, his mission was to make the best GMT that you can get under $1,000, and he was successful. I think it's one of the best bracelets that you can get on a watch under $1,000. Their bracelet is phenomenal. You get micro adjust in that bracelet. Also, the watch in general is just a good looking, sort of 70s inspired, but it's definitely a modern watch. It feels modern. It looks modern, just sort of a modernized 70s watch. But they didn't stop there. They came out with a new dive watch. They came out with a new dress watch. All of these watches featuring higher grade movements than what they've used in the past. They're listening to enthusiasts. They're working with enthusiasts and making these watches. And Jack Mason has really blown up over the past few years, collaborating with brands like Dr. Pepper, making some pretty incredible watches. And I really like Jack Mason. I can't wait to see what they're going to come out with next. I know it will be enthusiast approved. The next brand on this list you might be surprised by. It's Christopher Ward. Even though they make a lot of watches every year, and they are very popular with collectors or people who are even lightly into watches, most people out there do not know what a Christopher Ward is. If you go out or if you work in a major company like I do, you're not going to see a Christopher Ward on someone's wrist. It is very, very rare. And if you do see one on someone's wrist, usually that person is a watch collector. They're very innovative. They make really high quality watches, especially considering their prices. They keep on coming out with grail-worthy watches at regular watch prices. Watches like the Belcanto and of course the 12X. These are really high-end watches that are affordable, and Christopher Ward are known for this. However, just because they're known between me and you, the watch collectors out there, it doesn't mean they're an extremely popular brand. They are trying to be that. They're trying to be a household name, but right now they are not. They're still making their way towards that, and I think they will someday. However, as of right now, they are still very obscure, and work in a major company or go to your local bar, you're not going to see someone wearing a Christopher Ward. The next watch brand here on this list is Oxun Jr. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that I actually owned one of these watches and sold it. I sold it to fund another watch. I don't regret doing that because I really love the watch that I got. It was my IWC Oxun Jr perpetual calendar flyback chronograph, which I think is a phenomenal watch, and I love that watch. However, I did sell an Oxun Jr to buy that watch, and I do regret it. Oxun Jr make watches that are very, very simplistic, but at the same time, very complicated. I actually have a quote here from Ludwig Oxlin, who is the owner of the brand. He actually owns it with his son, or he works with his son in some capacity on the brand. He says, "My pieces seem simple, but the intellectual path to a simple build is extremely complex. Making things simple is not the same as simplifying. For instance, it might mean designing a single part that can perform 3 different tasks and solve 3 different problems." He uses very simple designs to create some pretty cool complications, like a moon phase. That was the one that I had, but his calendars are kind of cool. He has a perpetual calendar, a full calendar, and a day-night I think they recently came out with. Very, very good looking watches if you like the look of industrial design. So that's kind of what they're going for here. These are very industrial looking. The design on the dials are almost like industrial art. Lots of muted colors, raw materials. The cases are made out of either grade 5 titanium or sterling silver. All of their straps come in a raw form. So you're gonna have to like that look, that industrial look, that raw form look. If you don't like that, you definitely will not like this brand. I do, and like I said, one of the biggest regrets I have is selling that watch. I will eventually own another Oxun Jr and have one in my collection because I really do think they're a special brand. If you like the look of really high-end watchmaking, but you don't like the price, then Ophion is a brand that you should definitely check out. They make some really high-end looking watches that don't cost all that much money. One of their watches costs around $3,500. They have another watch that has a micro rotor that costs a little bit more. I'm talking about the one that costs $3,500. The other watch costs around $8,000. Even though it's getting a micro rotor, I think that's a really good price. It's a really crazy dial as well. It's their latest watch. I'm talking about their more affordable offering. This is a hand-wound watch. So if you like a hand-wound watch, this is a hand-wound watch. It gets a soap rod movement that is bespoke to this brand. I haven't seen it in any other watches. It's a really good looking movement, and you get a display case back, so you get to see that movement. You get a really beautiful case with teardrop lugs. You get a beautiful textured dial. However, it's all done by machine. So all the finishing that you're seeing on the dial, all the finishing on the movement, that case, it's all finished by machine, and that's how they keep the prices really low on these. But what you're getting in the end result is somewhat of a high-end watch that is created in a very affordable way. So they pass that savings along to the buyer. So if you are interested in those higher end watches, like I was mentioning before, this is a really great brand to check out because they make some pretty high-end looking watches for very good prices. Well, there you go. There's the video. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. I know there's a lot of other brands out there that I could have mentioned. So if you could, just tell me another brand down in the comments below that you think is sort of overlooked and you'll never see anybody with any of the watches that I just mentioned in this video on their wrist. And if you do, they're definitely a watch collector. They're not just somebody who likes watches or is casually into watches. These are people who are watch collectors. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of all the watch brands that I mentioned in this video? So let's end the video here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, all that good stuff. I very much appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.